Good afternoon or good evening, dear colleagues. I'm not absolutely sure what extent of time zones we have got. Let me congratulate you with their, well, just past Women's Day, International Women's Day. And let me say once again that I'm happy to see you this Saturday. And hopefully we will be able to cover um, a wealth of material today because we're having a look at Band 9 essay as you asked me. I have found some incredibly useful links for punctuation and advanced grammar. Then we will have a quick go at line graphs, bar charts, flow, and pies, which is writing task 1 IELTS. And finally, if we are lucky, we'll get to IELTS speaking. If not, we will leave it till next time, comparing it with TOEFL speaking, which is also a very good idea or very good alternative because those two exams are, I wouldn't say drastically different. However, there is a world of difference between the formats, and that would be especially interesting for the teachers to have a look at that. So, my dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, how are you? Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. I had a day off yesterday and it was a great one with pancakes. I'm happy that it coincided with Maslenitsa this year. So, thanks a world. So, are you ready? Let's have a look. Okay. Hello. Great. We seem to have a wonderful little company here, knowing each other and seeing familiar faces on a weekly basis, which is great. That really is. Well, dear colleagues, so Band 9 essays. Let's have a look what it looks like, especially taking into consideration the smooth flow. What they mean by linking that doesn't attract much attention, and what they mean by sophisticated vocabulary and collocations. So, doing an enjoyable activity with a child can develop better skills and more creativity than reading. To what extent do you agree? Use reasons and specific examples to explain your answer. It is clear that we have got an opinion essay, so it has to follow a specific structure. We should write the introduction and include our own opinion and then support our opinion by proper arguments, properly developed arguments, and here you will see them, what they mean by properly developed arguments. And we have to extend our essay so that it covers everything at the same time remaining logical. So what has the person done? Parents throughout the world spend time reading with their offspring to prepare them for school, where their literacy skills are further developed. However, recent research suggests that focusing on reading at an early age can be detrimental, and participating in fun activities would be far more beneficial. I'm a strong advocate of this approach, and the benefits of it will be covered in this essay. How do you like this introduction? How do you feel about this introduction? There is something special about it that we have mentioned briefly in discussing IELTS topic. However, we haven't gone into much depth. I really enjoy the last sentence of the paragraph because it sums up the opinion. However, not in a very common way. So it's not like, in my opinion, or from my point of view, I'm a strong advocate of something, good English, and at the same time, the person also plans already and structures the next paragraph of the essay. The benefits of it will be covered in this essay. So it's kind of like a hook to the rest of the essay. However, what else has the person done by such an introduction? Why is it a 9, not a 7 or 8? Hello, join in. We are having a look at Band 9 essays, as you asked me, and I'm trying to ask you, my dear colleagues, what is so special about this introduction? What kind of impression does it give to you if you are an examiner reading it? Do you remember then while we were talking about IELTS topics, I mentioned the point that in fact IELTS doesn't really check some aspects of linguistic awareness. It also appreciates, especially if we are talking about an essay, background knowledge and being able to talk on different subjects, to express your thoughts and opinions, being aware of what is happening around you in the world. In fact, yes, that's point number one. When I have a look at this introduction, the first thing which I see, he really explains that it's a debatable issue, that there are two sides of it. There is something to be talking about. However, how he does it? He applies his background knowledge, and by the way, he has this background knowledge to put detailed argument. Because it's not just that some people prefer reading to their children in order to prepare them for school, while others insist that some other activities would be more beneficial. He really replaces the words. He kind of thought it over in his head, and he has here even information about a recent research. So he has read something on the topic. He knows about what is going on in the world. He knows about advances in educational systems. I have this idea that I'm not just reading a, kind of отписка. Надо написать. Я написал. No, I see the thing that I see the point that the person is, if not interested in the topic, at least knows something about it. And then you've got good English, yes, perfect reasoning, and wonderful collocations. And when we are talking about less common structures and vocabulary, here it is. A fundamental reason for this, wow, brilliant collocation. Those collocations can be taken from one of our favorite books, Keywords for Fluency. Is that there is no biological age for reading, and pushing infants to acquire this skill before they are ready could have repercussions. It can't. 9 is the maximum. For example, in the UK, many boys are reluctant readers, possibly because of being forced to read, and this turned them off reading. By focusing on other activities and developing other skills such as creativity and imagination, when they are ready to read, they usually acquire this skill rapidly. Brilliant example from, well, it's actually common knowledge and everyday life. In addition, the importance of encouraging creativity and developing a child's imagination must be acknowledged. Through play, youngsters develop social and cognitive skills. For example, they are more likely to learn vocabulary through context rather than learning it from a book. Mhm. My dear colleagues, do you feel the difference between this essay and the previous ones which we were discussing? And if yes, then what will you ascribe it to? So it's really different. Is it about okay, what is that about? Is it about grammar? Is it about language? Is it about reasoning? What is it about? Language, style. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, the thing is reasoning, right? Okay. The author is confident and the vocabulary is great. Mm-hmm. Yes, and the person sticks to the subject. So it's kind of like instant planning and and that is exactly what required at IELTS. You see that one idea just follows another one, and he thoroughly supports the idea within one paragraph. So his first idea is no biological age for reading, and there may be some difficulties. He uses the word repercussions, which means negative past effects. Then he gives an example to support that with boys, and he actually goes further, developing the idea like what can be done, which way is more beneficial than forcing a child to read. In fact, he is coming back to the circle, supporting his opinion. So totally different level of thinking and logic. That is why it may be difficult, by the way, to get a 9 for school leavers and for younger people. Not because their language may not be that advanced, more so because of lack of information about the world around them. They may not be aware of many things that are happening around them. They may not be that well read, and it may be difficult because of lack of background knowledge and, mm, well, in this case, the range of situations they are familiar with and they had some interest in. Because you see how well he gives examples in each paragraph, and in all probability, with another topic, he would be doing the same. So it's like an ability to see some supporting evidence in the world around you and put it straight to use. Well, the third paragraph, logically, it's impeccable, absolutely. And there is another point. The thing is that more often than not, unfortunately, we do not have that time and we do not have that class which would teach or which would allow our students to go through this sort of logic. And generally, which would allow them to build their reasoning on a logical way of thinking, giving one idea and then finding an example and a detail to support them and building a link to another idea. And that is exactly what is highly appreciated. If you remember Russian compositions and Russian essays, they are built according to a different structure. English compositions and essays right now at the level of 10 and 11th years of school, they are generally built mechanically. They try to insert this type of logic. However, it really takes time, and it also takes certain personal growth and well, mind growth to be able to produce such things. Uh, the last class of this big course, I wanted to devote, because of that, to the idea of debate club, because it is something that helps to structure arguments and reasoning and makes it much easier for students to write such essays as IELTS, for example, requires. And do you remember the book with TOEFL model essays? It has pretty much the same logic. However, TOEFL generally doesn't require this level, so it doesn't give you a 9 in writing, because 9 is advanced level of, well, shall I say it's not only for language, though maybe IELTS examiners will to a certain extent disagree with me. It's not only about language as we think about it. However, it's logic is a very English way of thinking as well, and it's trained. It's well, shall I say, imposed in many ways, or in English-speaking schools, in English-speaking countries, and in international schools. So that's the example of it. And then finally, so less common vocabulary and less common structures, however, still within the limit. Furthermore, play allows youngsters to mature emotionally and gain self-confidence. There is no scientific research which suggests reading at a young age is essential for a child's development. Moreover, evidence suggests that the reverse is true. In Finland, early years education focuses on playing. Reading is only encouraged if a child shows an interest in developing this skill. This self-directed approach certainly doesn't result in Finnish school leavers falling behind their foreign counterparts. In fact, Finland was ranked the 6th best in the world in terms of reading. So the person knows about it and knows how to use this knowledge. And then finally, one of the most difficult parts, conclusion. Have a look. Despite being a supporter of this non-reading approach, I strongly recommend incorporating bedtime stories into a child's daily routine. However, reading as a regular daytime activity should be swapped for something which allows the child to develop other skills. Yes, critical and global thinking, that's true. Easy use of reasoning, logical flow of ideas, and have a look. What else has the person done, especially in their conclusion? And it is something that sometimes we won't be able to teach our children to do, or probably it's not even recommended. The thing is that band 8 and especially 9 is already about, in a way, it's already about breaking the rules. Do you remember we were discussing the structure? Strict, firm, and what the person is doing here, he or she is not adapting to the structure. He knows the structure very well. It's paragraphed, it's topic based, exactly. However, it's very flexible. And the thing is that the person doesn't stick to something one. He or she is already ready to be indirect, use some sort of vague language, understatement, show his appreciation of opposing ideas, give balanced way of thinking, and is ready to do it in the conclusion as well. Kind of like no matter what, I think there is still time for reading in bedtime stories. So that's Band 9, and I hope you enjoyed it. There are two more compositions of essays of Band 9. The second one is, well, pretty much the same structure, applies knowledge of more common linkers and link cohesion devices. Beautiful language once again, filled with collocations, examples at the same time. So the person shows that he knows what he or she is talking about and is ready to play around it. So here they are. And great resources regarding some grammar rules and some writing rules, which I'm ready to share with you, are those ones. That's one of probably one of my favorite books, Grammar for English Language Teachers. It's not for students. It's like really strictly for teachers. If you have a look at the contents, what is special about this book? The book actually covers this pretty much the same topics any book covers. However, for the teachers, it explains some common mistakes that your students may make. It shows some ways of dealing with them, and it focuses both on theory and practice, giving extensive explanation of what it is, what it looks like, why it is used in English, how it is used in English, and what you can do so that you and your students will be using that. You are always welcome, really, you are always welcome. Мы еще попросим нашего чудесного модератора все это сложить нам в архив, запаковать. Because we like those things, don't we? Yes, it is. And what I would like you to have a look at, I would like you to have a look at here. You asked me the previous class, so which grammar structures? Oh, I'm really about to hide. I didn't mean to be that good. No. You asked me about grammar structures which require special attention if your children are aiming at IELTS higher bands. Or probably you are preparing for IELTS higher bands. And then what you definitely need out of here. So which structures count? Which structures give you a huge advantage over everything? Well, here we are. It's part B. Multi-word verbs and verbal expressions. Definitely. Multi-verb verbs is actually вот у нас и архив сразу есть, поэтому держите. Спасибо огромное. Спасибо большое-большое. So, we are returning. Those are phrasal verbs, and phrasal verbs are greatly appreciated by examiners at IELTS and at TOEFL. They're a kind of a must. Then, conditional sentences, definitely. Conditional sentences, especially with an omission of if, or replacing if with provided, providing, supposing, as long as. So those are a demonstration of really strong hold and strong command of grammar. And then in part C, you have got another beauty, something that we don't really discuss that much with our students, and something, actually it's easy thing. It's an easy thing. However, you rarely come across it in standard grammar, unless it is advanced proficiency, though even then you won't see lots of them. That is discourse markers. Вот они те самые, обеспечивающие внутреннюю, internal referencing. And ellipsis and substitution. Ellipsis is when you skip some of the information. Substitution is, or when you shorten the sentence to avoid repetition. And substitution is the use of it, there, ones, those, these, which help again to link the sentences in a much more natural way. So have a look at those. And one more which we really have to have a look at are in part D. Well, clauses in general are a nice thing to use. However, defining non-defining phrases and clauses, because there may be not only clauses, also phrases, and integrating the elements in a complex sentence, in complex sentences. That's another thing which is highly useful. Another great resource, this time it comes actually in the form of two links. The university, one of universities, thank goodness, gave a whole big part of their site to writing mechanics. And here we have Denling modifiers and how to correct them. Denling modifiers это условно лишние слова в предложении. Kind of difficult to explain, however, not to repeat useless subjects, objects for many times. However, in many cases in English they are replaced by passive structures. Have a look at this one, that's a beautiful one. And another mechanics that is explained here is sentence clarity. So they're actually going through the logic of building sentences and reasoning from bigger to smaller, from old to new, in order to make sentences more readable, more understandable, more logical, and as a result, clear to the reader. So avoid heavy writings and heavy sentences. These articles will definitely apply both for IELTS and TOEFL. And then students will definitely benefit from it if they go into further educational process in English. Then, I promised to tell you a bit about parallel structures. Here you have Evergreen Writing Center Library, just explaining what they are. And in fact, we generally know what they are. However, we never sum them up, and we rarely move them to higher levels. Because parallel structure is something very strictly about English. One of the early examples of them, one of the simplest examples of them is with structures with like, love, or just a sequence of events. Like, Ellen likes hiking, attending the rodeo, and taking afternoon naps. Or Ellen likes to hike, attend the rodeo, and take afternoon naps. So parallel structure means that when you start a sentence, you have to use the same sort of a structure, not to break it. For example, like in the second one, non-parallel. My best friend took me dancing and to a show. There is nothing grammatically wrong about this sentence. However, it doesn't sound English enough. In all probability, English people would say, my best friend took me to a dance and a show. Wording it so that you have to join two ideas only with and, not to apply another grammar structure. Like, my dog not only likes to play fetch, but also chase cars. Nothing is wrong with that. However, in all probability, again, you will, in the English-speaking environment, hear something like that. My dog not only likes to play fetch, but he also likes to chase cars. Or even a bit more complicated variant, that is with the ellipses. My dog likes not only to play fetch, but also to chase cars. Yes, exactly. Yes, Екатерина, шел дождь и два студента. Yes. That's exactly what parallel structures are trying to avoid. And when we are talking about when we are talking about them at higher levels, so the thing is they are everywhere. Like literally, they're everywhere. When we are talking about them at higher levels, they also in English apply to reasons. I and a student will have to use equally, well, shall I say, reasons of equal weight in one sentence or in one paragraph. For example, I suppose that parents. Oh, it should be in the materials. Or if it is not, I hope that in the materials we have got the whole big pack of everything. And I will show one more parallel just a second. Oh no, it's here already. Yeah. So you will have to use the same level of argument, like children have to be given, I don't know, more active games instead of reading. First of all, because it is essential and beneficial for their social and cognitive development. Moreover, it gives them an additional advantage in terms of, let's say, motivation or physical level of physical fitness. You cannot use here something like moreover, it's fun. It will be totally breaking the logic of an essay. So parallel structures are everywhere, from infinitive to generally everything. And even then, for example, lots of students have problems using such ideas as, oh, we'll see it in the graphs just in a couple of minutes, such as уровень продаж подымался и будет подыматься дальше до конца периода. In English, once again, you will have to use parallel structure. And you will have to put the verbs like has been increasing and will continue to increase or will be increasing with the same verb instead of saying it in two sentences. So, and that's also appreciated because that is good command of English and good command of logic. So parallel is everywhere. Обидно на самом деле, как бы, то есть мы очень часто это чувствуем, особенно когда сильно начитаны английской литературы, или у нас просто хорошо с логикой. Мы действительно это чувствуем, но далеко не всегда мы можем это произнести студентам. А это как раз одна из тех вещей, которая граничит в языке с мышлением и выстраивает и мышление, и грамматику одновременно. So, that's a good one. Another one that you asked me, I found it. I found these little punctuation guidelines for American college students. So generally you have all the punctuation which is available in English here. Full stop, comma, semicolon, colon, dash, quotation marks or inverted commas, hyphen and capital letters. Capital letters is punctuation in English. Generally, when we are, and is it a happy scream or a scream? I'm sorry, couldn't help asking that. Usually we don't go, we don't go any further than full stop, comma, quotation marks and capital letters. However, English is much more versatile in terms of that. So, sheer happiness. That's great. Okay, I'm really happy. I am happy. And here you've got a wonderful explanation of semicolon that is used very often in English. And one more, which hyphen, and please have a look at it, because the point is, if you have higher level students, or for example, you are aiming at a higher level exam, IELTS, CAE, TOEFL, and so on. The thing is that here, with the use of semicolon and hyphen, is where, or dashes, it's where Russian rules in many ways contradict English ones. Because the thing is that in English there are not so many words established which have established spelling as one word with a hyphen, or two words. And in most cases, you can use them at least in two ways, with hyphen, without hyphen. In English, a dash is very often used when in Russian we will be using colon or commas. English people would be putting a dash. And vice versa, when we will be using a dash in, for example, прямая речь, English people will be absolutely happy with commas. And with full stops, please have a look here. British version and American version are different. As long as titles are concerned, as long as some abbreviations are concerned. So it's not only the marker to put at the end of a sentence. And if IELTS is pretty relaxed on that, TOEFL is not. TOEFL is not that good here. And one more, the use of full stop and the use of upper comma in numbers. Because here you have decimal numbers with a full stop. In Russian it is actually comma. And you will have thousands or millions with upper comma. In Russian you won't have it at all. So just have a look at that. So generally, the most comprehensive guide which I have found. However, If you have a look at number 3, insert a comma. It's not like obligatory. You're welcome. Always welcome. It's not obligatory in many cases, and students will not be using it that often. So, beautiful list. And no, that's it for now. I hope it will make you happy for a while. And off we go to the second task of writing at IELTS. So, generally, life is both easy and not so easy with IELTS writing, because in part 1, I mean academic writing, because in general module you have a letter, our students are faced with such a beautiful challenge as graphs. Good point, there are not so many of them. We have generally got line graphs, which show us different trends. Then we have got bar charts, which usually show the level. However, sometimes they can in fact echo line graphs if they show the development of something. Then we have pie charts, and we also have something that is called either flow charts or process charts. Also, there are tables. Depending on the structure of a table and the numbers in it, it goes actually very well under the scheme for line graphs and bar charts. And then there are maps. Maps more often than not go for flow charts. They are that sort of thing. So, the biggest amount of vocabulary here focuses on trends. So let's have a look at that. Generally, that's what our students have to know as such. They have to be able to describe trends like upward trend, downward trend, using correct prepositions, using, and it's a must here, adverbs and adjectives to characterize what kind of trend it is. So steep increase or rapid increase, or vice versa, there was only a slight growth, or it declined gradually. So that's the vocabulary generally, and the idea of a certain variety of structures. So turning nouns into verbs and going back to them and applying participles like followed by something with subsequently or with subsequent increase. So that is something that counts here. However, also what counts here, we're talking about IELTS, is once again such a beauty as structure. The thing is that vocabulary, yeah, or it can fluctuate or it can be erratic. Do we have the right picture for that? Mm-mm. No, somehow I must have forgotten the... Yes, that one. Okay, I will definitely give it to you. So, what can happen here? Our students have to write at least 150 words. So that's a minimum number. And generally good and, well, I mean expanded answers look like 170 words. At the same time, the amount of time is limited. Generally, they have something like 15 minutes, not more, to go through the graph. IELTS wouldn't be IELTS if it hadn't appreciated the structure. The first paragraph is always an introduction. What can I write in the introduction in this way? Introduction at task 1 always involves paraphrasing the name of the graph. So if you have here the graph below shows the amount of waste produced by 3 companies over a period of 15 years, then definitely you will have to change as many sentences or as many words here as you can and say something that the given line graph illustrates the quantity of waste materials thrown away or well, in this case manufactured will not go, probably left in the production process by 3 companies over a period from 2000 to 2015. The more you paraphrase it, the better. Because synonyms will come in handy here, and that is something that counts as a variety of structure, a variety of vocabulary, and flexibility of vocabulary. Of course, it will be difficult to replace each word or substitute it by something. However, the more the better. At least 2 synonyms for companies, which can be manufacturers, and at least 1 or 2 synonyms for waste products, or just to waste. Then the task generally sounds like that. Summarize or report the information by highlighting the main features and making comparison where relevant. What can students do then? How they can structure it? Of course, each time it depends on a graph or chart. However, generally, in your second paragraph, you find some trends. You establish some groups. In this case, it's clear. It's noticeable that there are 2 main trends, upward and downward. As regards the former, it is presented by company C, starting at about 4 at the beginning, 4 tons of waste materials at the beginning of the period, and gradually climbing to approximately 10 tons by the end of the period. The downward trend was demonstrated by other 2 companies, A and B, which both ended the period down. However, well, in this case, I would say that they were following a different pattern. And then I would generally talk about the first one and then about the second one. So you group them somehow and then just describe one group and the second group. Or sometimes the third group, depending on which visual you have got. However, first you have to decide on this logic. how exactly you are going to go about it. Well, so verbs are known. Adjectives, adverbs are known. We know what we are going to be using. So what gives people additional points? Adverbs, because they allow for precision. So not just increase, what kind of increase? Increased how? Linkers. And then I have got a question. What sort of linkers, if you have to summarize something and then you have to compare things, what sort of linkers do you expect your students to use? Pretty much the same ones if you compare and contrast. So there have to be first of all order linkers or order phrases. There has to be effect. Maybe sometimes effect will go here. There has to be contrast. While whereas by contrast, meanwhile, on the other hand, on the one hand, on the other hand, absolutely. Especially if you're talking about grouping here. And also there are some phrases, either summarizing phrases, kind of like in general, it's obvious that, it's noticeable that, what comes across clearly from the data, of kind of attracting attention. I usually call them kind of like look phrases. Or such phrases which are also summarizing trends. They follow the same pattern. The pattern is reversed. However, at year 2005, the pattern for company C or for company B changes. So not too much what they are asking for. With line graphs, it's pretty easy. Let's go to the second type. And here we have got bar charts. And this one is a bit more, well, shall I say it's kind of trickier. Because if with line graphs we at least had some vocabulary listing. Upward, downward, fluctuating, remaining stable. Which phrases and which constructions can our students boast here? What are the winning points here? Ничего никуда не ползет, не падает. Right, okay. So the first obvious thing is actually comparison. And using adverbs with comparison. By far the highest. So modifiers with comparison. Much fewer than. Less popular. So comparison of all sorts. The structure stays pretty much the same. So comparison modifiers with comparison. We are staying with the same logic, so adverbs, linkers, and some phrases also are significant here. And then there are two more points which people will generally have to boast here. Because bar charts, more often than not, they first of all characterize popularity. So, experienced higher popularity, was more popular than, was chosen by a bigger number of people, voted for, proved to be more preferable. So different phrases of preference and popularity. Took more interest in. So generally kind of like this range of vocabulary, this range of structures. Preferences, popularity, choice, cited, and one more here together with that. You will have to use a range, or you may use a range of reporting statements. So people voted, people cited, people claimed, people stated. And then another point is actually how I can replace the word people here all the time. And definitely I wouldn't go for human beings, right? Or creatures of the nature, no. I would go for those interviewed, those surveyed, or for example, over 80% of the sample, those questions, interviewees, those who took part in, definitely passive. Here passive is in all probability kind of a must, though it will play its role later. So synonyms. Synonyms for people and for different groups. So you will very often have here people grouped by age. In younger age bracket, in older age bracket, in among senior citizens, among those over 65. So generally those are all types of people, groups of people, and so on and so forth. However, there is one more tricky, and it is a tricky one, vocabulary that unites them with pie charts. The thing is that we will have a look at band description in, I guess, in 10 minutes or so. And you will see that a benchmark between 6 and 7 here is the idea of incorporating data and details. So the point is that when our students describe such graphs, any sorts of them, such schemes, they must name the actual numbers, taking them from the scheme. And when you are already reaching higher level, of course, you can still put about 85 and you can still put it in brackets. Or you can add some very specific descriptor to bigger percent and to smaller percent. For example, an overwhelming majority, a massive 85%, a hefty 60%, a tiny minority, or you can even go for descriptive numbers such as just over half instead of 52%, just under 40, 1 out of 4, almost 2 out of 3, вместо 2 трети или 65%. So 65%, that's easy. 2/3 is already a bit more difficult, and almost 2 out of 3 is already high class. So variations for numbers. Numbers must be included. You have no choice here. However, you can really go to, I hope you can see the pie chart. Let me just do one thing, and I hope that we have got a sample of it. Yes, here they are. Definitely, here they are. So let's have a look at a couple of examples. Those are good levels because I intentionally have chosen pie charts to be one of our first samples because it seems to be as easy as bar charts, almost nothing to write about. That is why it's interesting to have a look how the person manages to do what he has to do. So here you have. The pie chart below shows the results of a survey of people who visited 4 types of tourist attraction in Britain in the year 1999. So summarize the information, highlighting the key features and making comparisons where relevant. That's a strange pie chart, in fact, because you have something like 2 in 1, and that is often the case with IELTS when two types of visual information are combined in one task. Here you have pie chart, and one of the parts, actually the biggest part of it, is broken into categories, so it's more detailed, and it has to be mentioned as well. So what we have got as a result with an essay, with our little report. The pie chart compares figures for visitors to 4 categories of tourist attraction and to 5 different theme parks in Britain in 1999. It is clear that theme parks and museum galleries were the 2 most popular types of tourist attraction in that year. Blackpool Pleasure Beach received by far the highest proportion of visitors in the theme park sector. Looking at the information in more detail, we can see that 38% of the surveyed visitors went to a theme park and 37% of them went to a museum or gallery. By contrast, historic houses and monuments were visited by only 16% of the sample, while wildlife parks and zoos were the least popular of the 4 types of tourist attraction with only 9% of visitors. In the theme park sector, almost half of the people surveyed, 47%, had been to Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Alton Towers was the second most popular amusement park with 17% of the sample, followed by Pleasureland in Southport with 16%. Finally, Chessington World of Adventures and Legoland Windsor had each welcomed 10% of the surveyed visitors. So what has the person done? By introduction, he actually joined the idea, the information, what the first one is about, what the second one is about. Then he in fact goes for the highest ones. So his idea of main features is naming the highest popular ones in each category. And then he breaks information into 2 paragraphs telling you about generally pie chart and then the table breaking down popular museums and galleries. If you were the examiner, which points, apart from logic and structure, here it is absolutely impeccable, here it is great, you would admit or you would pay attention to as winning points. What has the person done? You remember that logic of IELTS is actually to have a look at what the person has done. Not at something which that he has not. Data. Yes, it's included. And by the way, have a look. Only once he included it in brackets, so kind of mechanically. In all other cases, the person actually worked with data and it is inserted logically into the sentences. And yes, what is more, data is not just mentioned, it is really compared. It is compared with while. It is compared with the order, like the first one, the second one. It was followed by. Okay. So data is not only given, it's also given for a reason. The person actually logically constructed the sentences once again. It's IELTS, it's appreciated. Okay, what else? Anything regarding vocabulary? Contrasted and yes, and concluded, right, okay, не бросил на середине, да. Структура прекрасная, да. So the introduction then, it is clear that looking at the information in more detailed in the theme park sector, structure is beautiful, impeccable, okay. However, have a look. Also, he said visitors, surveyed visitors, them. Then he avoided mentioning people because he used passive. Well, not passive actually. No, passive and then just were the least popular. Then he said people surveyed and the sample and surveyed visitors. He used 5 synonyms to the word people. He described them in 5 different ways. Very rich in synonyms. And then comparison, which you mentioned as well, which you mentioned as such, here you have it. The 2 most popular types, by far the highest proportion of visitors. Вот красавчик. By far the highest proportion. Then the least popular, the second most popular, and then he avoids it and he says that actually the places welcomed the visitors. So once again, the whole range of describing the same thing, pretty much so. Okay. Well, how do you feel? What has he got? Which band is that? You would give it a 9. Okay. Yes, definitely it is. For the sake of synonyms, vocabulary, and incorporation of data into sentences. At the same time, structure matters. So this one is a 9. We have got one more which is a 9. However, the different pie chart and I just would like you to have a look here at the logic of classifying and grouping data, because that is, by the way, the most, or shall I say, the trickiest part for our students. They are not familiar with visual data as such. I mean, even describing pictures is difficult for them. IELTS at the same time focuses very heavily on diagrams, on visuals, and on all sorts of tables, pictures, labeling, etc. And secondly, when they have so much information, they tend to fail to classify it into some categories. If with bar charts it's sometimes easier for them, with pie charts they find it almost impossible, though the idea is pretty simple. Well, with line graphs it's easy. So upward trend, fluctuating trend, or stable trend, downward trend. Classify it by that, no problem. With bar charts, usually you classify by criteria. For example, boys, girls, age groups. Here, you have to decide by yourself, and that's one of the biggest problems. So here we have the pie charts give information about the water used for residential, industrial, and agricultural purposes in San Diego County, California, and the world as a whole. It is noticeable that more water is consumed by homes than by industry or agriculture but in the two American regions. By contrast, agriculture accounts for the vast majority of water used worldwide. So, he found the ones that are closer to each other, so similar ones. And then another one which he's going to be comparing everything with. And one more type of vocabulary that weighs heavily at IELTS is, or again, are synonyms for account for, comprise, make up, constitute. So all the ideas for составляют. Because if you don't have preferences or popularity, you will have generally the idea of consists. However, it's not consist here because the sample consisted of 3 industries, each industry comprising, accounting for some proportion. So verbs for that. And then he goes for San Diego County, California state, and residential water consumption, contrast with a mere 8% of the water. Смотрите, какой умничка, да? То есть не только туда процент вставил в предложение, так он к нему еще и прилагательное подобрал. A mere, а еще и правильно, кстати, подобрал, because a mere plus percent, it's like tiny something. A mere 8% of the water used globally goes to homes. The opposite trend can be seen, and here we have kind of that sort of phrases, like it's noticeable that the opposite trend can be seen. When we look at water consumption for agriculture, this accounts for, не вспомнил comprises, но ничего страшного, зато все остальное вспомнил. For massive 69 of global water use with only 28 of water usage in San Diego and California, respectively. И вот она внутренняя reference. Such dramatic differences are not seen when we compare the figures for industrial water use and so on. Lilia, no. The thing is that the structure in general includes such points here. You have to be very, very precise and up to the point. Introduction, some kind of classifying, categorizing within, and one or two paragraphs giving more details on the categories that you have chosen. Another type of structure includes, however, it's less logical and usually doesn't give our students much of help. Introduction. First, key features, something that you see clearly, something the brightest, something the most evident, the most obvious one. Then going into some details, making comparisons, and then some sort of general overview, мало ли что-то еще не сказали. It's less logical and in many cases it's difficult. It may be applicable when you are talking about line graphs, like you are going to be introduction, then you are saying about the highest point and the lowest point. Then you are describing some trends and giving comparisons. And then, yes, you will have to finish with something. Usually you finish with some biggest contrast, or vice versa with the most obvious similarity. It's kind of a bit of mechanical, less logical. It does have its reason to exist, and people may use it. However, yes, it's much more difficult for students to go to a higher level with this structure because it relies heavily on their personal ability to what they see as main features and what they see as general overview. You know what I mean. So, and now, what I really wanted to have a look actually at two of the things. First of all, let's have a look at our writing band descriptors. That is task 1. Once again, we have pretty much the same criteria. And here, I guess that for us, ranges such as from 1 to 5 are not that interesting. Let's go straight to 7 then. Because from 7 on you will be including the data, and here you have covers the requirements of the task, presents a clear overview of main trends, differences or stages. So actually the person has to say in the second paragraph something about that. Then clearly presents and highlights key feature bullet points, but could be more fully extended. Then again, logically organizes information and ideas, uses a range of cohesive devices, though they may be under or overuse. Lexical resource pretty much the same, sufficient range of vocabulary, with some flexibility and precision. Less common lexical items with some awareness of style and collocation, and variety of complex structures. With 7, it's already covering all the tasks, sequencing and information and ideas logically, uses paragraphing, managing all aspects of cohesion, wide range of vocabulary, and wide range of structures. So, having this beautiful document at hand, I would like us, I would like us, and then I will talk a bit more in depth about flowcharts, to have a look at these samples. Only one of them is not, no, two of them are 9. Actually, one is an arguable 9 for me. And here we have got a flowchart. Flowchart is totally different in terms of completely unpredictable vocabulary. I will show you a couple of more flowcharts. And the idea is you generally never know what is going to come your way, what life has in stock for you, and why on earth you are right now looking at that thingy. Because it can describe literally anything, from water cycle to to formation of coal in the ground layers. Generally, what you can beat these flowcharts with are passive. We never know the agent who has done that. And passive here is a must. Trying to use unpredictable vocabulary here. Trying to elicit from ourselves all ways of moving, coming, flowing, piping, manufacturing, generating, producing, and whatever not. And very specific linkers here and linking devices, because what you will definitely be looking at is at stages. And ideal plan looks like that. You definitely go for introduction. However, in the introduction, you include information of how many stages are there in the process, because it will be easier for you to break it into logical pieces of writing. Just literally counting them. And then you marshal your ideas by at the first stage, at the initial stage, then, next, after that, following this. By doing so, then, at the next stage, alternatively, at this stage, finally. So you have to use the linkers of progression. And then, as a result, you definitely will have the idea of ending that. And then, yes, you will have something like, as a result, in the end, so some word of thing. So, now we generally know how to do it. Let's have a look at this beautiful sample. And now my question will be, why it's only 7.5? Look, the person has written 3 paragraphs. I also see some beautiful vocabulary here. Why it's 7.5? Let's look through that. The diagram illustrates the procedures involved in the production of steam with the help of a gas-cooled nuclear reactor. Overall, it can be seen that the reactor and heat exchange are the 2 main components which help in the production of steam from water. Ну, по-моему, он почти молодец, потому что с этим еще разобраться надо. However, to begin with, the reactor consists of a pressure vessel which is covered with a concrete radiation shielding. Inside the vessel, there are 4 graphite moderators, each of them containing a uranium fuel element. Each fuel element is attached to a bearing rod control at the top, which also has charged tubes to load the fuel elements. The pressure vessel is connected to the heat exchanger with the 2 ducts. Water enters from the lower end of the tube and escapes as steam through the upper end. The process begins when the boring control rod is detached from the uranium fuel element. A gas blower pushes air inside the heat exchanger into the pressure vessel through the opening in its lower end. Next, when air passes through the fuel element, it is heated, and this hot air enters the heat exchanger. The hot air converts the water in the heat exchanger into steam. Why it's 7.5? Why it's not a 9, for example? What was, well, not kind of wrong, however, maybe insufficient in this particular sample? Mm-hmm. Few credible linkers, okay. There is no conclusion. He may not make it. He may just describe the process. He has done it. Galina, however, you kind of pinpointed the problem. Didn't describe all the process in details. Yes, my dear colleagues, when did he come to describing the process? Where is the process described really? At the end, absolutely. And in the third paragraph, right? Okay. And in fact, this has to be the whole report devoted to the process. The thing is that he managed to describe only part of it and kind of made an attempt at the second one. Do you understand from his second paragraph what is happening inside the reactor? Do you see the stages? Exactly. He describes the picture, not the action, what is happening here, which is happening here. The thing is that the whole process actually looks a bit different. As the water is steamed into the water circulator, at the same time, cool gas duct goes through the gas blower. And with the pressure of the cool gas, what happens? As it flows between uranium fuel elements, it actually lifts the barren control rods, or actually I should say that uranium fuel elements are placed around graphite moderators. And then this gas goes through hot gas duct, thus prompting the heat exchange in the tube and going and thus our water is converted into steam. No. It's not about the subject. It's about it's actually something very specific to IELTS because you have to be able to read diagrams as well. You have to be able to understand what is shown in by visuals and be able to describe it in the language. Yes, it is. It is tricky. I completely agree with you, especially taking into account that most of our students are not just unfamiliar with it. They're not going to be familiar with it in the nearest 5 or 7 years. and they simply do not know how to extract this information from a visual. That's probably the trickiest part. That's why that's 7.5, despite logic, despite beautiful vocabulary and grammatically correct structures. One of these will show great vowel shift for us to make fun. No. In all probability not. Generally they deal with some much more technical things. Marketing, technical and map geographical things and expansion. So not IELTS topics, sorry. However, yeah, that would be lovely. Но при этом, смотрите, он на самом деле-то сделал только половину задания, но при этом он получил 7,5. Because of his good grammar and good vocabulary structures. Okay, let's go for the next one. And here we have got line graph. So percentage of tourists to England who visited bright attractions. Here you have art gallery, pavilion, pier and festival. And here you have another sample, which by the way goes just for 7. Why? Let's have a look. What's wrong with that? And by the way, if it is so wrong, why it's 7? Why it's not 6 and not 8? So the line graph illustrates information about the percentage of visitors in England exploring the 4 different tourist attractions in Brighton from 1980 to 2010. Overall, it can be seen that Pavilion was the most popular attraction while Pier was the least popular. To begin with, around 24% of tourists visited Pavilion in 1980. This figure then significantly rose to around 49% in 1995. However, interest in the Pavilion declined over the years, and only about 35% of total tourists visited this place in 2000. By 2010, the visitor share had declined to almost 30%. Meanwhile, there was not much change in the percentage of people who visited festival attractions during the given period, and it remained in the range of 25 to 30%. Visitors to the art gallery spiked about 38% in 1985, and afterwards it declined. In 2010, less than 10% of the total tourists visited art gallery, while Pier got only 10% of visitors in 1980. It had more than 20% of visitors in 2010. Point number 1, no paragraphing. Exactly. 8 requires automatic paragraphing. Tudun. Went to 7. What else? Good vocabulary, by the way. Beautiful, wonderful range of vocabulary. Nice linkers. What else was wrong here? Because I guess that with paragraphing you would feel, with vocabulary you would see that the person actually manages to use some specific things. So significantly rose, then declined over. There was not much change in the percentage. Given period. Remained in the range. Очень красиво, вообще почти на 9. Что ж не так-то? Exact numbers without adjective. So first of all, there is no flexibility and no variations regarding numbers. And what is more, at some places he or she, I don't really know, didn't put the numbers. Have a look at the sentence with 38% with spiked. Visitors to the art gallery spiked 83%. 38% in 1985, and afterwards it declined. И он не проходит на восьмерку, потому что не предоставил максимально полную информацию. It declined how? Там до 90-го года он declined sharply and almost halved actually. And then experienced a short period of growth followed by further decrease in numbers to under 10%. Absolutely. The information is not fully extended. Бросил на половине пути. Увидели? And regarding grammar, so it's still a mix between simple and complex structures. So some of them probably kind of easy. So that's why it's a 7. Mind you, 7 is a very good band. So usually this is a piece of writing produced by upper intermediate to advanced students. So it's brilliant writing in general. And well, the only unfortunate thing is that had he broken that into paragraphs, the band would have been higher, at least half the band. Then you have got 2, 4, 9. Beautiful ones. I'm just trying to show how varied and how versatile they can be. I especially like the production of 5 different kinds of tea. However, with flow charts, it's difficult to break it into paragraphs. It's allowed to go just as one text. However, it has to describe the process. Nothing else, just the process. Making comparisons where relevant. And a couple of more process and flow charts. Some of them seemingly easy, like this one is water flow. Again, broken into stages, and then each stage is described. And two very popular types of process charts or flow diagrams. One dealing with technology, showing how something works. So, for example, the diagram below shows how solar panels can be used to provide electricity for domestic use. There is no 10-pointer, sir. 9 is the highest mark. If you have a look at the band descriptors, it's the top mark for IELTS. That's it. No matter what you do, you are not getting anything higher than 9. And frankly speaking, I guess no matter what you do, you cannot get lower than 2. So if you do something, okay, yes, that's a tricky one, by the way. Because we seem to be thinking in kind of like a range of numbers. That's a great one. By the way, dear colleagues, you may enjoy, you really may enjoy one of TED Talks. I will try to find it right now for you. It is exploring the way how languages we speak, the linguistic environment, in fact, influences and forms our mentality. It's exceptionally interesting in terms of numbers. It's a very short talk. However, there is an extended research which can also be found on the internet because, believe it or not, lots of languages don't have numbers. And some languages group numbers differently. Like English has a history of very different grouping of numbers. First of all, by dozens, not by tens. And secondly, if you explore the money terms in shillings and pences, they would group them even by stranger numbers, 15s and 16s and 50. So totally different attitude to numbers. And that's something that we just demonstrated because it's linguistically ingrained in the tens are linguistically ingrained into our brain. And according to British curriculum, uh, according to Russian curriculum, we generally study multiplication tables till 10. So multiplied by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 is maximum. According to British curriculum, multiplication tables go till 12. So British children, they learn to multiply by 11 and multiply by 12 as well in a table. That was another one. I guess there may be several of them because right now it's well, shall I say it's all the rage in scientific research and in the area of exploration of our brain, how the links are formed, how the connections are formed, and what influences them. So I listened to the one that was about numbers, numbers, colors. That was really cool. So highly recommend it. So this one, solar panels and electricity for domestic use. The trickiest thing here is that seemingly you have got all the information. Why it is tricky? Because you cannot repeat it. You will have to paraphrase it, and it's difficult. And then the final one is probably my favorite, map. In fact, it's the same process chart, pretty much the same. And my dear colleagues, I would like you to have a look at the map and at the story under the map without looking at the answer. What logic can you see in the expansion of this little village? And that is, by the way, the logic which then will have to be ingrained into the answer. How are you going to build the logic? Do you see any connections between the areas, between the numbers? Hmm, difficult one. And I do understand that. That's about visual information. Uh-huh, okay. So what kind of logic would you apply to describing? Yes, Galina, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Right. The logic here is actually how the process of the roads, yes, how the process of development of the roads facilitated the development of the village. And then the stages are marked here. They are interconnected. And one important thing here is that you don't have much data, right? You don't have many numbers and anything else to include into your story. Как же попасть на восьмерку и девятку? Здесь же цифрок-то, собственно, практически нет. However, it has two places marked on the map, Chorleywood Station and Chorleywood Park and Golf Course, and those are, well, they kind of stand for the data which has to be incorporated into the description, which is curious. So, I hope I kind of sparked your interest into writing task 1 of IELTS. I do suggest taking a 10-minute break now. We will return at 5 to 6 Moscow time. And yes, we will manage to talk about speaking today. So, great work. See you in 10 minutes. So, we are ready to go further. However, before we go to IELTS speaking, I've got a question still returning to graphs of all sorts. Because now we know all the challenges that our students are going to be facing. We know the structure, we know the requirements, and also we know some of, well, shall I say, additional selling points, like which vocabulary counts, which structures count, and so on and so forth. However, either if you have ever taught your students to describe line graphs, bar charts, and trends of all sorts, or you are just going to do that in the nearest future, or you were learning that to do by yourself, what do you feel is actually the first and, well, shall I say, the primary step before we go into the linguistic aspect of that? Or what was the first step for you as you saw it? Or shall I say the first challenge to deal with? And then definitely the next question will be how to work. Okay. Yeah. A good point, good question. So first of all, what they are created for. So understand the purpose of them. Understand why on earth we actually are talking about that. To teach logical structure of the text. So generally, yes. Line graphs, by the way, are the easiest to begin with because there you have more or less obvious structure, more often than not. And you have the language which automatically goes in there. It makes easier for the students to understand what exactly you want from them. However, Irina, yes, that's a very good point because unless our students really understand what this visual is for and about, it's very often kind of difficult to do it automatically. And for many students, that's an obstacle. Like for many clever and for many Russian students, that's a huge obstacle because unless they really know the purpose of it, they won't be able to do it mechanically. And it's difficult to teach them to do it mechanically. And the second way, yes, the second point is just logic as such. Well, now we are coming to probably again my favorite type of, well, after explaining some things about IELTS, I kind of discovered for myself that I love it. God knows why. So, um, because frankly speaking, Cambridge exams resonate much better with me and with my understanding of what we are teaching. However, IELTS allows to do lots of things, really. And those tricky graphs, they work very well for logic and they work very well for adverbs. So, okay. In FCE, I suppose that I enjoy writing most of all, and I enjoy one part of speaking because for Cambridge exams, in general, it's much clearer why you need all this language. At IELTS and TOEFL, it's much more specific and maybe too academic oriented. However, I appreciate logic of IELTS and I appreciate the variety of essay structures together with the pressing need to use adverbs and introductory things. FC do not, no, they don't have graphs. No. IELTS is unique in that, together with Всероссийская Олимпиада. Because why we were talking about graphs at such length? Because as soon as we get to Olympiads, we will find out that Sierras had a great pleasure of applying IELTS tasks, modified to a certain extent, so not directly, for last 3 years. So in this way, we kind of have to teach our students to do something about that. So, however, speaking, if you remember IELTS speaking format, it goes in 3 parts. And once again, kind of everyone has to be given a chance. That means that the examiner has a paper with a bit varied questions depending on the level of the student, which is explored at the initial stage. At the initial stage, it's not just FCE warm-up questions. It may go a bit further, and it resembles free-flowing dialogue between the examiner and the person. At the second stage, it's a monologue. The student has a minute to prepare. It really reminds to a certain extent something that they have to do now at AGE, because they have a topic. However, topics are much less abstract. They are much more practical and down to earth. They have a topic. They have some questions related to the topic, usually 4 points. And they have to tell about they have to tell about all that, covering all the points. We will have an example here. And then finally, at the last stage, they go for more abstract questions, which can usually fall into one of 4 categories. So advantages and disadvantages of some trend, recent changes and developments, your personal preferences and attitudes to that, and what can be done to improve, to encourage, or vice versa, to prevent something in this area. Generally, they are at a higher abstract level, discussing anything, really anything, from environment to technology, media, music, and so on and so forth. And the point is that the examiner has got the questions broken into three categories of difficulty. And the more abstract, the more complicated the question is, the higher the opinion of the examiner about the student is. Because for the students who are below level 6, the examiner will be limiting himself or herself to 4 first questions. And if you have ever seen past papers and the teacher's notes, you will have that. You will see that they are divided in three groups of 3-4 questions. Then, if they already go for some changes, experiences, or how do you foresee, how do you envisage the further development? That means that they think that you've got the vocabulary, you've got the scope, the range to cope with such question. First of all, to understand it, and secondly, to structure your answer. So, let's have a look at speaking band descriptors. Once again, we have got 4 of them. And in this way, here in this case, you have fluency and coherence combined in one. So generally, task achievement and coherence are seen as one. Lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy. And here you have accuracy. Before that, generally, it was about grammar structures and pronunciation. So, we already know that 6 is a benchmark, so let's have a look at number 6 right now. Is willing to speak at length, though may lose coherence at times due to occasional repetition, self-correction, or hesitation. Uses a range of connectives and discourse markers, but not always appropriately. So, that's the first point which the examiner is going to assess. Whether a speaker is ready to communicate. It's a one-to-one interview, which means that the speaker has to give, you remember we didn't have it at FCE, at FCE vice versa. They give a sufficiently long enough answer, however not more. At IELTS, they have to show that they are ready to speak at length, even when they are asked simple questions. So the best rule for FCE was to restrain yourself somehow and keep to the topic. The best rule for IELTS will be keep talking. Add more details. However, stay on the topic and use connectives and explain why you are adding these details, so link that all together. And even sometimes when at the first part, we will see that as well, the student answers at length, almost like with a 30-second story. That's okay. No one is going to interrupt them at IELTS. That's fine. They can continue. So one of the greatest differences between the exam, and it has to be taken into account while we are preparing students. So at FCE, enough is enough. At IELTS, no problem, go further. Then, lexical resource has a wide enough vocabulary to discuss topics at length and make meaning clear in spite of inappropriacies, generally paraphrases successfully. So, once again, what is appreciated at IELTS, and we saw it in writing, the ability to paraphrase the topic, the ability not to use the same vocabulary which was given to you as a prompt by the examiner. Tricky as it is something, once again, that to a certain extent, well, it doesn't contradict. However, if at FCE you repeat the task to your partner with the same words the examiner has just used, it's an appropriate strategy because it's natural. You are just wording once again the task to yourself. Sometimes we do it, and it's absolutely fine. At IELTS, no. You have to paraphrase it. So we can call that certain anti-plagiarism installed in the exam. I kind of like this criteria. It teaches quite a lot. However, it's tricky. Then grammatical range, absolutely the same things, uses a mix of simple and complex structures, but with limited flexibility. Limited flexibility is the key phrase here. May make frequent mistakes with complex structures, though these rarely cause comprehension problems. And then finally, pronunciation. Uses a range of pronunciation features with mixed control, so sometimes works, sometimes not. Shows some effective use of features, but this is not sustained. So sometimes the intonation is fine, sometimes it's not. Can generally be understood throughout, though mispronunciation of individual words or sounds reduces clarity at times. Once again, I hope, my dear colleagues, you noticed certain difference with FCE, where the requirements to pronunciation were less strict and less worded. So the main pronunciation requirement at FCE was clarity. Here, the main requirement is sustainability. So if you can use that feature, if you can use long vowels, if you can use intonation, if you can use stress, you have to do it throughout. Otherwise, it is accounted, it's calculated against you, it's counted against you as a mistake. So IELTS is much or imposes harder requirements on pronunciation, gives more freedom for lengthy speaking, and would like the students to paraphrase. So we've read Band 6, and with that, I really would like us to watch two examples. Let's have a look at the first good-looking young man. And my first question is he above Band 6 or below it? So, the first young gentleman in the stripy shirt. Let's have a look at him speak. Let's have a look at him speaking. Ready? Steady. Let's go. Not the whole thing. It's a kind of a long one.
Let's talk about what you do. Do you work for
Okay, let's stop at 3 minutes 37 seconds. And once again, returning to my question, is he higher than 6 or is he lower than 6? He's above. Okay. He's above. Okay. Aha. Irina, why? Why lower? Aha. What has he done to be higher than 6? Yes. He sounds quite natural. Yes, absolutely. He uses, by the way, okay, let's go to the criteria, right? Let's go to the criteria. He is, we go on to 7 then. Speaks at length without noticeable effort or loss of coherence. He does it. He's ready to speak at length. And there are no kind of stops. He doesn't fish out for words. He doesn't have to stop to think. But have you noticed that initially he's given 3 topics already to discuss? He's asked first about job, then friends, then food. So at IELTS, practical level covers at least 3 topics. And he can go on talking about that. He tells a story. Sometimes the examiner has to prompt him with like, why not? Because he doesn't give the reason by himself. However, generally it's a good flow of speech. Okay, let's go then. May demonstrate language-related hesitation at times or some repetitions and self-correction. No, he didn't even do that. That's 7. Uses a range of connective discourse markers with some flexibility. Well done. Okay. Only pronunciation, decent grammar, idioms, good vocabulary, fluent language, absolutely. Repetitions are not occasional. What has he repeated? He has repeated a couple of times, however, it is allowed for band 7. Then, uses vocabulary resources flexible to discuss a variety of topics. Yes. Less common idiomatic vocabulary. He does. And collocations, uses paraphrases effectively. He does. He doesn't even repeat the examiner's questions, so he goes very well even for 7. What happens then? A range of complex structures with some flexibility and frequently error-free sentences. Have you noticed lots of errors in his speech? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. However, they're all natural, like a natural flow of English. Do you see the point? So, in fact, he even beats level 7 because it's not just like frequent error-free sentences. Generally, it's only kind of a slip of a tongue or a rare mistake regarding grammar. And all natural. And then all the possible positive features of band 6 and some, but not all, and positive features of band 8. Oh, I love it. Easy to understand throughout, accent is minimal, sustains flexible use of features, only occasional lapses, and generally he is understandable. Well, he is well above 6, definitely. He speaks at length. He uses beautiful vocabulary, that vocabulary, range of vocabulary, collocations, idioms, phrasal verbs, if you have noticed. He uses discourse markers like actually. He links his ideas. He stays on the topic. His grammar, yes, there are a couple of repetitions which kind of pull him closer to level 7. And his pronunciation, no, it's not perfect. However, it's clear and it is sustainable. Like he doesn't jump from one way to another way. He's more or less the same level. And this, by his pronunciation, keeps him at level 7, not letting him go higher. Because his vocabulary and grammar is actually level 8. IELTS examiner put him 7.5. Of course, we haven't listened to everything. You will hear that he has even more vocabulary in the last part. And that's, I would say that the first part is decisive for levels up to 7. The second one can add to that information. And the final part is already decision 7 or higher. However, let's have a look at the second part. We have a girl in a very bright t-shirt. And again, my question will be 6, lower or higher? Ready? Let's go. She's trying very hard. Let's see how it goes with her. Mm-hmm. So, a great, very optimistic, kind young lady. So, how did she do? My dear strict colleagues, Wow. Yeah. Definitely lower than 6. Natalia goes for a 5. Dina is even stricter, a 4. hmm Simple language regarding grammar, right? However, have you noticed lots of mistakes there? Like in every sentence, or pronunciation and grammar mistakes make her speech difficult to understand. Poor pronunciation, absolutely. So that is something that is going to tie her down. Despite the fact that she is ready to speak at length, right? So the thing is that if you have a look at fluency and cohesion, in fact, he is number 6. Willing to speak at length, may lose coherence at times, uses a range of connectives, so she kind of tries. However, what happens then? Her lexical resources, by the way, is good, not on the range of topics, because with shopping that was some and picnic that was something strange. However, with volunteering, which she calls volunteer all the time, that was more than enough. She remembers overcome, she paraphrases herself, get over problems. Good girl. However, her grammar is really limited. And her pronunciation, yes, makes it difficult to understand her. So here we have, with grammatical range, produces basic sentences forms with reasonable accuracy, uses a limited range of complex structures, and that's what she did. And she uses a limited range of pronunciation features, can be generally understood, however, sometimes it's difficult. She's a 5. Yeah, she is a student within band 5. Not good, not bad, just the way she is, and really she's trying very hard. She has done one more thing that probably um, would be calculated against her even if she had better pronunciation and better command and grasp of grammar structures. Because if you have a look at IELTS topic in general, it has strict 3 or 4 points related to the topic of discussion. The points would be: what is your interest or hobby? Why do you like it? The reasons why you like it. Maybe how you started or when you started. And then actually it can be a question like when did you do it last, or how often do you do it? So generally it focuses on past and present. What has he done? What has she done? She has done something that is, of course, very nice of her, very nice, optimistic, open young lady. However, what happened? Have you noticed that? At certain point of the test, she simply got carried away. She stopped thinking about the topic, though she stayed on the topic. She kind of started dreaming in the process. Very nice of her. Very honest, sincere, young girl. However, that is something that can lose her at least 1 point in this task if you don't cover all the structured points, because IELTS is an exam, it's not actually about dreaming. So sorry. Well, I've got one more for well, actually, I've got two more for you, but I've got one more young gentleman for you to decide, and I guess it's going to be kind of tricky this way. If he is mm, higher or lower than the first gentleman. So, because the first one was 7.5, good range of vocabulary, natural English, speaking at length. The second one was 5. So, where is this one? Is he between them or he is higher than 7.5? Ready? Let's watch him. Okay. So, where is he? Where is this one, this talkative gentleman? Oh, not so talkative, by the way. Is he higher than the first one or he's between? He sounds to be of higher level than the first one. Why? And why? Lilia, you mean you will put him at the same level as the first one? Irina higher. Dina between. Lilia, Olga, Dina, why? What are your reasons? And Anne and Irina, why? What are your reasons? By the way, that was the third part of the of IELTS exam. Have you noticed how the examiner is putting the questions? Have you noticed that? So the examiner is generally almost leading the dialogue, prompting him with what about negative effects? Why? How do you feel about that? High because of fluent speaking, but there were novel pauses, right? Okay. Started rather optimistical. Yes, he did. Mm-hmm. What do you think of his language and structures? Much more complex vocabulary, the variety of grammar constructions. Absolutely. He uses adverbs potentially, necessarily, just generally more fluent, great vocabulary. Endorsement, repercussions, sophisticated vocabulary. He doesn't show off with some idioms here. However, high flown, very ambitious vocabulary. Adverbials, modifiers, exactly. And everything is in the right place. Why why does he sound sometimes weaker than the first one? Examiner asked very difficult questions. Exactly. Very high level questions. And they are discussing influence of celebrities, role modeling, images, and also they are discussing the trends, the changes. And while they were, by the way, at the trends and changes, he was pretty comfortable. He knew what he would be talking about, right? However, he kind of got lost by the yes, modality. He uses it absolutely fluently without any hesitation. So great man. What let him down? There were a couple of pitfalls. Good phonological control. Yes, exactly, Lilia. You are absolutely right. Actually, that is 8.5. However, at the end, he got lost. Exactly. He stopped being able to talk at length about the topic. He didn't really know what to say, so that wasn't his topic. And all his great vocabulary, perfect control of phonemes and grammatical structures of everything was almost for nothing because he was searching for ideas. However, there were two questions when he almost missed the point. He kind of took the time, especially with the one before last. Yes, it can happen even if you speak your native language. Exactly. That's why he is penalized only half a point. However, at the exam, what could he have done? He should have actually used some survival strategies. If you are not absolutely sure what to answer the question, what to say, like, I'm not absolutely confident right now, I'm not absolutely certain, I can remember a couple of real life examples just off the top of my head when celebrities were endorsing some causes What comes to my mind first are certain commercials with football players advertising some perfumes or sportswear. However, I'm afraid that's about it. The thing is that 8.5. The thing is that you don't have to answer the question. You have to show that you are ready to speak at length. He can't ask for clarification, however, he can play for time and he can speculate out loud. Like he answered more or less like very shortly about negative effects on the girls. And then as for the boys, I'm not that sure about that. I suppose they are not great to that level, to that extent affected by such problems or such worries that the girls may have. At the same time, if image is not problematic for them, I suppose it may be a matter of character. And in our competition-driven world and the world of cutthroat businesses and wolf eat wolf, this way may well be the case if celebrity demonstrates destructive behavior. I didn't know the answer. I was constructing it. No, Yelena, that's a different thing. Um, you have to speak. You don't have, the thing is, he lost the point because he, he kind of showed that he's hesitating what to say. If he goes on telling what he thinks or how he feels about that, or actually, yes, admitting that I'm not absolutely sure what to answer to this question. However, what comes to me and continue talking. If he had continued, he would have passed it for 9. And he kind of got lost. That's exactly. So in fact, he got lost. Yes, Galina, you are right. He got lost with communication. So he probably kind of took it too seriously, like exam situation, and I must answer. No, at IELTS it's fine. You can generally speculate, and you saw the examiner is very supportive. And the examiner is ready to provide you with a couple of additional questions. If examiners at IELTS ask you additional questions, they think that you can do better and they're giving you this chance. Lilia, that's the point. At IELTS, you very often cannot think over all of the topics. However, this topic was pretty general and it's widely discussed. There are many articles about that. So he could have read something about that. He could have, maybe he was just stressed. In this case, just the main point is just go on talking. Admit that you are not absolutely sure and go on speculating. Just don't clam up. And he would have a 9. Otherwise, that's beautiful. That's beautiful speaking. And that's exactly what is expected, I mean in terms of vocabulary and grammar, for levels 8 and 9. So this vocabulary, academic vocabulary, sophisticated and very precise, is something that differentiates levels 7 and 8 and then gradually 9. So while if you remember first certificate and Cambridge exam, it's not always vocabulary, It's actually more about communication strategies and more about coping English behavior and English strategies, being indirect, using understatement, clarifying the meaning, paraphrasing what the person has said, being supportive, and things like that. So a bit of a different emphasis of both of different exams, both Cambridge ones and IELTS is another thing. With TOEFL, you will see that it's still another focus, and we'll come to that next time. Probably we will even start with speaking while still the memories of those speakers are fresh in our memory. I do recommend listening to the last one. So that's the whole speaking test. He got a high band. So he's a fluent speaker. However, have a look at him. He's an interesting one, especially in terms of both pronunciation and grammar. So, and with all these wonderful and beautiful materials to study over the week, I guess I'm wishing you an incredible weekend, or what is left out of it, a springy weekend, wonderful week full of inspirational ideas and grateful students. And I'll see you next Saturday. So, goodbye. Thanks a lot. Thanks a world to everyone.
Центр онлайн-обучения «Фоксфорд». Курсы по всем предметам. Подготовка на разных уровнях. Лучшие преподаватели. Интерактивный учебник. Обучение онлайн. Поступай в «Фоксфорд». Начни обучение бесплатно.